I'm in the little village of Yelden, and if I pan over here to the left, we'll see Yelden Castle. I have to say that this is probably one of the finest Motte and Bailey castles in Bedfordshire. Yes, we're in Bedfordshire. Massive evidence of water around here. We're on quite low lying land. You can see there's obviously some massive pond there, or was a pond. There are streams and rivers. It's a motte and 2 Baileys, not just 1 Bailey. There's evidence of fish ponds around. Substantial earthworks all over the place. Sheep in the field. There's 1 Bailey here, the other Bailey's on the other side. Fish ponds are over here. But you can see a ridge here. There's a footpath into the field that goes next to it. You can see it is a substantial motte, substantial earthworks. There's the church over there. I always say find the church and you find the castle. Normally works out. I've been here a couple of times before. Obviously didn't make a video, I took photographs last time. There is evidence of subsidence. I think children in the winter, when this is covered in snow, obviously sled down it. That's not a good thing, but you can't, I suppose if I was a kid I'd want to sled down it. It has subsided a little bit. It is well kept, I would say, compared to a lot of other Motte and Baileys. Last time I came here you could actually see water bubbling up down there somewhere from a spring. So you can see that it would have had water running around the outside. It's getting a bit windy now. There's 1 Bailey there, and you can see evidence of the other Bailey on the other side. It's just starting to rain a little bit. This is the fish ponds, I think, that it mentions just here. Fish ponds, for those who are wondering, obviously they would have little ponds nearby where they would keep fish, which they would eat. Being Catholics, they would probably eat that on a Sunday. Or was it a Friday? Oh, correcting myself, I believe it was a Friday, because you weren't allowed to eat meat on a Friday, so you would only be allowed to eat fish. But that is one of the biggest mottes I have ever seen anywhere for any castle. Sadly this side we've got the evidence of rabbits, which are causing a huge problem. But yeah, that is a massive motte. You can see the outer bailey here. I don't know which one was built first, or which one's got evidence of a gateway or an entrance to it. Just trying to shield the camera from the rain, which has just started. Substantial earthworks down there. We are in low-lying ground here. People tend to think the castles are on tops of hills, but a lot of motte and baileys, the main part of their defensive nature was water around the moat, which would make them much more difficult to get into. I'm having no trouble getting up here with these modern boots I'm wearing, but if you were a Saxon or a Norman trying to get up there in flat leather-soled shoes with no heels on them, wearing mail armour, carrying a kite shield, a spear, possibly a sword, an axe, a helmet, you probably would have struggled to get up there. Well, in fact, I know you would have struggled to get up there. I'd like to film a bit more, but it's just starting to get a bit heavier raining. There is another massive motte castle. I don't know if it's in Buckinghamshire though, not Bedfordshire, but it's very near. It's called Canehoe. That's got a massive motte. It's made even bigger because it's on the side of a bluff that goes down even further, but I mean you can see the size. Of this motte from down here, the sheer scale of it, and there's evidence of how wet it was. Again, sadly, evidence of rabbits. Mind you, they probably would unearth stonework and artefacts and stuff from the making of it. Rabbits were introduced to this country by the Romans, but they never really took off that well, and then they were reintroduced by the Normans, purely as a meat source, food source, and now rabbits are pretty invasive species. Obviously part of the motte has sunk just there, but you can see how big it was around. The sheer scale of it is unbelievable. You can see the height of it. Just wipe the lens. The weather gods haven't been good. I didn't think it was supposed to be raining now. We'll just walk around the motte. You can see how big it is. Still quite steep on some sides. That's the evidence of the square fish ponds over there. We're coming down here, but we're still on top of the motte. This has subsided a little bit. I don't think it would have been made in this shape. It has clearly sort of dropped a little bit. That's the second bailey there. Possible entrance way there. There is a little sort of stream or something runs along there. We're still on the motte as we come up here. I think there is a stream that sort of runs, because it's slightly higher up there. I think it does run down there. It comes down this way. I think it's probably been managed in some way to come down into here. See the rocks there, reeds. That it will come down, came down there, and come down there. Rabbiting on about these boots that I've got, but they're amazing for gripping stuff like this. If I was trying to come down here in a pair of normal shoes, I'd be slipping everywhere. Not that I want to tempt fate by slipping. I think is that a buzzard or a red kite? It's not big enough to be a red kite, I think. Or the wings are not that shape of a red kite. Evidence of stonework here that rabbits have probably dug out. Oh, nearly slipped then. Come up the ditch into the second bailey. Quite a substantial size. Those who don't know about modern bailey castles, normally you had, which is the larger the bailey. The bailey is normally where people lived. The would be where you'd either have a tower. There's no sort of template that would be exactly the same in existence. A motte and bailey, they'd be different, but you could have a little tower on the top, wooden tower, stone tower. You could just have a palisade. You could have a small hall up there where the Lord lived with his family, or the Lord might live down in the bailey in a you can see that stream there still wet, still got water in it. Doesn't seem to be flowing because it's a bit clogged by the look of it. Yeah, so in the bailey you would have possibly the Lord in his hall with everything that was there to service the Lord. A kitchen, a buttery, a falconer, a warrener, looks after rabbits, possibly a small kitchen garden, all sorts of things that would be there to provide food for the Lord and look after the Lord and his family. In the hall, the Lord, possibly he would have his knights, squires living with him. Depends on how important he was, etc. How often he was there. Inside the bailey, the other most important thing he would probably have is a stables, because the whole idea of a castle, motte and bailey castles in the first period when they were built, was the fact that they would have their knights would go out riding in the local area, the countryside, patrolling. Any trouble, they'd go out, quell it, So the most important part of this is probably the horses with their knights. You'd possibly have a blacksmith. He may or may not be making weapons and armour, because contrary to what you see in films, not every blacksmith made weapons and armour. Probably a blacksmith in a castle would, but village blacksmiths wouldn't necessarily make armour or swords. What are they going to do with them? They can't sell them to anybody because villagers don't buy armour and swords, so they're probably making nails and hinges and other farming implements and so on and so on. But in a castle like this, he would probably be a farrier. He'd be making horseshoes for the horses, bits and pieces for the horses, probably armour, swords, arrowheads, that sort of thing. Spearheads would probably be the most common weapon. Because again, contrary to belief, not everybody walked around with a sword in the medieval period. The most common weapon was probably the spear or an axe. We're in the second bailey here. But you'd have other people that were in here, some soldiers who guarded the castle. There probably wasn't a huge amount of soldiers that would guard a castle this size. Probably the most defendable parts of this would be the motte and the gate, and they would probably be the most concentrated parts, because the gate would probably be the most vulnerable part, so it would also be the strongest part because they would make it the strongest part. Hello sheep, what are you up to? Don't know, I think they've got lambs as well, because I think their lambs are all over there. Again, you can see the motte there. It's an unusual shape, it's not circular, but I don't know if that's because it's sort of slightly subsided this way or not. Yeah, and in the bailey you would have various other things. I mean, where the soldiers would live, they probably didn't have permanent buildings. They might have tents, lean-tos. They may have a few slightly more permanent buildings, depending on circumstances. You could have a section for visitors, people come in, live in here. It would all depend on the status of the building, the castle, how important the lord was, what his rank was. I mean, at the top you've got a duke, then you've got the earl, then you've got the baron. I mean, today it's duke, marquis, then an earl, then a viscount, and then a baron. I'm not sure the viscount and marquis were quite around in the medieval period. Somebody would correct me if I was wrong about that, but it's getting windy again. There is a lot to see here in this castle. A lot of earthworks. This would have been a substantial place, a very important place. Well worth a visit. Thing is, I don't think we're on any major roads or major routes around here, because normally that's probably where you would site your castle. I mean, we're not far. I mean, the A45 from Peterborough to Northampton, I think runs along over there, where I'm pointing the camera now. Or is it? Yeah, it's over that direction, I think. Yeah, I think that's west there. I think that's north there. There's not that many other castles around here in this area. Higham Ferries, which I think is probably going to end up being over there, had a castle. Titchmarsh, where I've just been, would have been over there. There was a fortified manor there. But normally you'd have a castle somewhere. I mean, if there was an important manorial area around here, that's where you'd site your castle if you were controlling a ford or a river. That's what these castles were for. People have a tendency to think castles were there for defence, but they were there for control. They controlled an area, they controlled the population, they controlled the movement of people in the area. Any sort of large-scale army that would be moving through an area couldn't leave a castle like this sitting here if it was opposed to them. They would have to come and besiege it in some way, try and capture it, take control of it, because anybody in here could come out, attack your supply lines, attack messengers, that sort of thing. So you wouldn't be able to leave a castle sitting there. But if you had a chain of castles in an area, if one castle was attacked by the locals, like Anglo-Saxons, because in most cases that's who you would be defending against in the early period of castle building, if they came over here and attacked this castle, you wouldn't need to hold out for very long. What you would do, everybody would get up on the motte there, which was easily defended. The Anglo-Saxons would probably rush around in the bailey, destroying things, stealing things. Once they'd left, if they did, or if they tried to attack you, there would be another castle nearby. You would have riders out. They would go out to the other castle. They'd gather other forces, and then all them forces would ride down here, and any Anglo-Saxons in the area would be just slaughtered, basically. It doesn't matter whether you were part of the attack or not, you'd pretty much be killed. So if you were an Anglo-Saxon, if you knew that this thing was here, and there's all these foreign-speaking people riding around in heavy armour, which you don't have, you would be less likely to attack the Normans, knowing what was going to happen to you. So that's pretty much why the castles were around. One of their purposes. You could control a pretty large area with one tiny little castle. I mean, that idea was taken on later on in, like, the Vietnam War, where the Americans set up little bases where they could go out and try and control the area. It's been used in Afghanistan and places like that, where you have little forward bases and so on, where troops could just go out. I think this one. Let's walk over this way. Try not to disturb the sheeps. Very skittish animals, aren't they? Big old tree there. Not an expert on trees. You can see there's another bank and another ditch there. I think the last time I came here it was sunny as hell. And it's really nice that this place is, it's probably because it's got sheep on it, it is fairly well looked after. The sheep eat the grass and keep it down and stop weeds growing on it. I have to say, this is one of the most impressive motte and bailey castles that I've seen. You can see the bank there. That may have been built to sort of manage this water down here. You can clearly see there is water in there. I think if a stream did come from down there, it probably would have just flown away. So what they've done is possibly built that bank there, and then then that's contained the water a bit more. It could be a dam in a little bit of a way. But if you're this way and you get a chance, and the weather's a little bit better, Yelden Castle is well worth a visit.